Hello everyone and welcome back. I'm Deziel and today I'm showing you how to change or modify neckline on any bodice. Changing the neckline on a bodice is one of the most simple modification you could do, but it still have a big impact on the style of the garment. Today I will be doing the modification on my basic bodice block, but you must know that it's the same technique that you would use for women, kids, and men's pattern, and even for different fabric, like if it was your t-shirt block. Now to show you the neckline today, I retrace my bodice block back and front, because when you do modify your neckline, you should do it in the same time for both back and front. The first thing we're going to do is put the shoulder together from the neck point, overlapping the seam line. So if your pattern doesn't have the seam allowance yet, you just put them one next to the other from the neck point. But if your pattern has the seam allowance, you must overlap seam line and seam line. And there's two ways to do it. Or you fold your seam on one of your pieces, so you'll be able to place them properly. The other way to put your shoulder together, if you have your seam allowance, because we cannot see what's under, and if we want to overlap properly, what I suggest is on one of the pieces, you're going to trace a line at twice the seam allowance. Here I have 1 centimeter, so I'm going to trace a line at 2 cm from the contour of the piece. Then you overlap your piece. You could place the contour of the other piece right on the line and make sure the pattern are together at the seam line, so right at the 1 centimeter. Then you could pin them together. I'm going to start today with the easiest one. We're just going to enlarge the neckline. And the rule is usually like this. The largest measurement is going to be on the center front, a little smaller at the shoulder, and even smaller at the center back. So the first measurement that we will need is the one that we'll put on the center front. And if you do want to make a very deep or wide neckline, I suggest that you start by tracing the circle for the bust, so you'll know exactly how much skin you're showing. To start, I did, as usual, a little tool that consists in one line on a little piece of cardboard. This one is 7.5 because I have a B cup here. And at both hands, I did a little hole with my pattern awl. Now you're going to place one of the holes right on your apex. Then with your pen on the other hole, you're going to trace the circumference of your bust. Today I'm going to go with a very low neckline, just a little bit over the bust circle. I would say it's about 10 centimeter. At the shoulder, I'm going to do it much smaller, maybe 4 centimeter. Then at the center back, I'm going to reduce the measurement again, about 2 centimeter. Then the next thing, I'm going to square a line from center back for about 3 centimeter. For a round neckline, you're going to have about 5 millimeters square at the center front. Then we're just going to connect the dot with a nice curved line from center front to center back. Once you're happy with your neckline, you could just add your seam allowance and cut the excess. For the second style, we're going to do a V-neck. And I already traced my circle because again this time I'm going to do a deeper V-neck. So now I'm just going to double my seam allowance on the back this time again and trace my line, so 2 centimeters from the contour. Now we're going to overlap the shoulder, the contour of the front right on the second line on my back, and the piece have to be even at the seam line, so they have to touch right there. Then we could pin them together. again, we're going to see that the front measurement is going to be the biggest one, at the shoulder much smaller, and even smaller on the back. So for today, a very deep V-neck, I'm going to do about 15 centimeters down on the center front. At the shoulder, I don't want it too wide, so from my basic original neck point, maybe another 2 centimeters. Then at the center back, from my basic neckline, I'm going to drop it about 1 centimeter. And again, I'm going to trace for about 3 centimeters square with my center back. Now the first style was a nice curved line from one point to the other, but here we have a V-neck, so most of you would have the tendency of doing a straight line from the center front to the shoulder. And if you do a straight line, when you wear the garment or you put it on the mannequin, you'll see right away that the line is going to curve out like that. So if you want your line to look straight, you must curve it, but in the other direction. And the way to get your line with the very small curve, but in the other direction, is to place your ruler on the center front point, but move the shoulder point maybe 5 millimeters towards the armhole. Then you're going to trace pretty much half of your line. For the second part of your line, you're going to use your French curve to get a very, very light curve. This is already giving you a tiny little curve, so you could go meet with a nice curve the back neckline, the 3 centimeters straight that you did. Now, just like we did for the other style, we're going to add the seam allowance and cut the excess. The next one is going to be the sweetheart neckline. And you will see that the biggest measurement is going to be at center front. And at the shoulder, depending on the style that you want to do, sometimes it's a pretty small measurement and sometimes it goes almost all the way to the princess line. This time again, we're going to overlap the shoulder the same way, seam line over the seam line, and both back and front should meet at the seam line. And we're going to pin them together. I guess you noticed that I always put 2 pins so it's more stable. For this one, I'll do it a little more conservative, so a little higher, maybe 8 centimeters. And I would say the bottom line should follow pretty much the shape of your bust line, so a little round. For this one, I'm going to use pretty much the princess line or the original position of the shoulder dart for the width of my neckline. And in the back, I'm going to drop it from the original, maybe another 1.5 to 2 centimeters. You trace from center back square for a little while, and I hope you notice that I will drop more on center back depending on how much I enlarge at the shoulder, because I have to be able to do a curved line from one point to the other. Now for the style line in the front, what I usually do is imagine a line from the shoulder line to the center front, pretty much halfway. You could even trace it with your pencil. Now to trace the front neckline, you must look at those 3 references and try to figure out where is going to be the point, which level on this line. So I did trace already with a light pencil, and now I'm going to do the final line, curving up for the first part and a straight line from the point to the shoulder. Why the straight line? Because you must continue this line very soft with a curved line all the way to center back. Now, just like for the other style, we're going to place seam allowance and cut the excess. Now my last neckline is going to be a boat neck. And for this one, we don't need to trace the circle around the apex because it's a high neck. Now for the boat neck, I think it's a better idea to eliminate the shoulder blade dart because it's going to be very wide opening at the shoulder. So I'm going to take this 1 centimeter shoulder blade dart and remove it at the armhole. Now for this one, instead of overlapping at the neck point, I'm going to overlap at the armhole point, just like that, and pin my pattern together. Now the idea of a boat neck is to have a pretty straight neckline, but since we have a big difference between the shoulder and the center front neck, the line is going to have to be curved for sure. And the best way to do it is to place the curve or the deepest part of the curve on the top of the shoulder, pretty much 2.5 or 3 centimeter on each side of the shoulder line. This is in the 3D of the body. It's going to be the top of the shoulder, and we'll do the same thing for the back and the front. Now we're going to decide how much we want to keep at the shoulder. Remember that this one has seam allowance already, so if you want to keep 2 or 3 centimeter, you just mark it from the seam line. Then we're going to go on the center front at the original neck point, and you're going to trace a square line to about 2/3 of the distance until the shoulder point that we put on the shoulder. Then we'll do the same thing on the back. Now if I place my ruler square at the original point on the back using my block, you could see that my straight line is going over my point that I want at the shoulder. So I will have to drop my ruler, but keeping it square. Here I'm going to give a little like 1.5 distance from the ruler to the shoulder line to be able to curve a little. Now when it's in position, you could trace again about 2/3 of the distance. Then we're going to curve from the square line to this point and from this point to the straight line. Now I just move my pin on the other side so I could keep my pieces together when I'm cutting. I'm now going to add my seam allowance and cut the excess. Some might tell me that they saw boat neckline finishing in point here at the shoulder, and I would say yes, that's just another technique. Usually we do it in point when you have a self-fold facing, and usually in the knit fabric. That's it for today. I hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching, and I see you next time.